What's up, world? It's your boy Hayden Dinsdale coming at you live from Melbourne with a video that I am a little bit saddened to be making today, but it must be said, and this is regarding the recent ill-fated death of Chester Bennington and a few ways that I think this could be prevented in future. Coming up next. If you haven't already heard, Chester Bennington, the frontman from Linkin Park, took his own life just in the last week, which is tragic news in the music scene. And it's news that I personally took quite hard as well when it happened. And this is what's inspired me to make this video. Because I found myself that morning, I was crying for like 2 hours, as if one of my close mates had just died. And it was odd for me, because I never feel that way about celebrity deaths. It seems so far away. The only other one was when Robin Williams died, and I'm sure most people shed a tear over that. But I found myself in the kitchen, like literally sobbing and judging myself for doing it, saying things to myself about how it's just one person, yet there's all this pain and suffering happening all over the world at all other times that doesn't bring me to tears like that. And how can I cry over someone that I didn't even know personally? But I think for most people my age, late 20s, early 30s, who grew up with Linkin Park in their headphones in their teen years, they could probably resonate, because they had very insightful lyrics and lyrics that I know personally got me through a lot of tough times. I had, in my teenage years, my mum was going through a lot of drug addiction, in and out of rehab, and I know they were really good for her too in her recovery. So for her and myself, we both found a lot of comfort in the music provided by Linkin Park. So it is a very sad time. But I did find it weird that I was judging myself, and then I realized that this is what the problem is. The problem is that men, in general, can't express their emotions. They are too afraid to wear their heart on their sleeve, and it's almost frowned upon to do so. Most certainly, traditionally speaking, it wasn't done. Men hid their feelings, and I think there's definitely a change, especially around my scene in Melbourne, and that with the younger generation, the modern man, I feel are getting much more in touch with their emotions. They realise how important it is to vent and to speak about things, because you only have to look at the relationships women have to understand this. By nature, women are far more nurturing. They're far better at displaying empathy. They're far better at speaking about how they feel, and they're far better at listening deeply and intently to what people are saying. I did a quick search prior to making this video. I looked up the stats on suicide in Australia, and according to the ABS, over the span of 5 years, the average number of suicide deaths in Australia sits at around 2,600. And of that number, 3 to 4 times, there are 3 to 4 times as many men as there are women committing suicide. And purely by looking at that, the red flag for me is that men are not as good at sharing the way they feel. So what I want to do is talk about what I've found has personally worked for me this year, and offer it as a suggestion to you, the viewer, to something to maybe take on board and implement in your own life, because I know personally I've seen so much benefit from it. And that is, I've been co-running a men's group for the last 6 to 7 months. And it's a place where anyone is welcome. And we just check in. Just hang out with guys. It doesn't have to always be talking about feelings and deep dark fears or anything like that. Sometimes it's just checking in, touching base, seeing how everyone's going. If something comes up, great, address it, talk about it. If it doesn't, talk about what's gone right, have a win, talk about the wins. But it's amazing what just those few hours every Thursday night have done for not just myself, but others in the group. For example, just last 2 weeks ago, we had a friend's father come from WA, from Western Australia. And he's the sort of guy who, he's a pretty stand-up, manly man. And has very seldom in the past ever spoken about feelings and emotions that I guess he was kind of repressing. And he said to us after that night, he's in his 60s, mind you, so he's a traditional fella. He said afterwards that it was one of the best things he's ever done, and that he's going back to WA and starting his own men's group because of the impact that being heard had for him. And that's all we do. We just provide a non-judgmental space where you can be as candid and as vulnerable as you want and not feel uneasy. You just feel accepted. And that's what I think men should really start trying to do more of. Because women are absolutely leading the charge here. By and large, women are so much better at this. And I get it. I get why it's intimidating and I get why it's scary. Because there is a whole thing around masculinity where you have to be this strong, stoic, indestructible, that archetype of a strong man. But the fact of the matter is, we are all emotional beings. Doesn't matter who you are. We all carry things. And to the extent that we let these feelings build up and fester, is the extent that they can negatively impact us and harm us and eventually lead to things like depression and suicide. As an analogy, I guess, imagine shaking up a Coke bottle and the bottle is the emotions and you've got the lid on tight and you're not ever letting it out. What happens if you shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it? Eventually, if you do let it out, it comes out in a very explosive manner. So this could be a metaphor for people going on a rampage and killing others, or it could be just non-productive ways of letting your rage go, or letting your your sadness go. As opposed to if you had that same Coke bottle, again representing the emotions, and you let the top open just a little bit every now and again, it would fizzle down. It dissipates, and then all of a sudden you've got this calm within. That's all it is. That's what these groups do. They just allow things to sit. So what I'll do is suggest, and this advice applies to women too. Like if you are going through some things, you need a support group. You need some supportive friends. And if you don't have supportive friends, you need to get some. Maybe find some new friends. If you're worried about talking in front of your friends though, with these groups, quite often I've found, and I've seen other people that have had the same thing, it can be easier talking about things around people that you don't necessarily know very well. There's lack of context and there's lack of an idea, a structural idea of what that person's supposed to be. So there's no judgment. It's just what they're telling you is just what's coming up. And you can be very open and receptive to that. So women and men, if I could give you maybe 3 or 4 pieces of advice right now, moving forward, so that you don't have to go through the sorts of things that maybe Chester Bennington has, and leaving people feeling so sad. Be kind. Start off by being kind to everyone, because you do not know the battles that someone is going through. You just have no idea, and everyone's got something happening. That person that's abusing you at the traffic lights might seem like a real jerk, but they may have just found out their father's got a brain tumor. You just don't know what people are going through. So be kind. 2, seek out some people to speak to. 3, listen. And I think those would be the 2 main things. If you are someone that needs to speak to someone, find someone who will listen. And if you are someone who is doing fine, then be that person for someone else. Be that set of ears who is willing to listen and accept, because you could be the difference massively in someone else's quality of life. And I extend this to you, the viewer. Again, if you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to, and you don't even know me, like I'm always open to talking to people. So if you need to talk to someone, don't bottle it. Please don't bottle it. It's just not healthy for anyone. Reach out, send me a message. I'll talk with you. It's so avoidable. And 4th, consider maybe finding yourself a group. It's tough. It's a tough topic. It's so hard being vulnerable and candid, but it's so liberating. And I guarantee you, if you just start, it gets easier. I will add any appropriate links and descriptions and stats below, just so you can have a look for yourself at what's going on. I hope this message finds you well, and please look after each other and look after yourselves.